This is a Padlet board. It's a bit like an online pin board. It will come pre-populated with some learning types here. So we have the 6 learning types that you will be familiar with. And on the left-hand side of the screen, we've got some information about the weeks so that you can organize the learning into weekly sections. If a weekly format doesn't suit you for the storyboard, you can group certain weeks together and you can edit these blocks to show that information. So if I hover over the week 1 section, for example, I can click on this pencil icon and change this name to say, instead of week 1, this could be weeks 1 to 3. So the idea for the storyboard is that you will have a look at the learning types. You'll think about what you want your students to do at different times on your module. Then you will click and drag the learning types over to the left-hand side of the screen to show where and when you want these things to occur. So for example, this might be the sort of general format of learning that we will expect students to follow in weeks 1 to 3. Then you can continue to populate the rest of the left-hand side of the board. Now, we only have 6 cards for each learning type, but if you need to use more, don't worry, because you can click, say, on the acquisition card, and if you hover over that, click on the 3 dots, you can copy the post and then select copy to this Padlet itself, and you'll get extra cards that you can use. Once you've created, you're happy with the order of the learning types and you've created your storyboard, we're going to add a little more detail. So for each learning type and for each section of the storyboard, we're going to add in some information about what type of activity the students are actually going to do. So to get some ideas for the types of things that you could do for each learning type, you can click on the link, more info and examples, and it shows you here what that might look like in a face-to-face setting. So for example, the students might be reading books or papers or listening to a teacher presentation, but it also gives some examples of how you might do this as a student online. For example, you might read a Canvas page with text, images and links to further reading. And we can see here that there's a little hyperlink that we can click on if we need some advice on how to do that. So we come to a guide here on how we can set up a Canvas page. So I quite like the look of viewing a live presentation on an MS Teams or Canvas conferences. So I'm going to copy that text. I'm going to go back to my storyboard, and for this learning type, here, the acquisition, I click on the pencil icon and I add in, I'll paste in that information about what the activity is. You'll notice here that we've made a note of that this activity is synchronous. Synchronous just means that if we're asking students to do that, they all have to be online at the same time. It's a real-time activity, and we'll talk about that later. You would go through that, adding more detail for each week, and eventually you've got a very detailed plan of what your students are going to be asked to do, and you'll also have links to information on how you can actually set that up within Canvas. One thing to think about is that when you have a look at all your activities, make sure that you don't have an over-reliance on synchronous tasks. It's a good idea to have a nice mix of synchronous and asynchronous tasks. Asynchronous tasks are things like text-based discussion forums that students can participate in their own time. The other thing to look out for is having the same kind of learning type over and over again. This will lead to a very monotonous course that may not be very engaging for students. So say in weeks 1 to 3, there's a lot of acquisition here. That's probably a lot of videos or information that you're giving to the students. but it's a good idea to allow them to have some opportunity to either discuss or question or interact with the information that you're providing. Good luck with your storyboarding, and get in touch if you need any help.